Thank you for joining us here on Something to Talk About. We've got a conversation today at the table here at King's in Tamuning, talking about restorative justice. We got a guest from the Attorney General's office, and then we got some folks from the Guam Police Department's Juvenile Investigation Section. We'll be talking about crime of the youth. That's all ahead on Something to Talk About. And welcome to Something to Talk About. Like we said tonight, we're going to be talking about, well, youth crime on Guam. Today, we got a couple of guests with us from the Juvenile Investigation Section, Police Officer 2. Scott Arceo is with us. You guys are really, thank you for joining us, by the way. And help yourself to the great fare from King's Restaurant. Here in Tamuning, we always have some fruit and stuff.
Thank you.
We were having conversations, we've been having conversations about youth crimes on Guam, and is it difficult working in the Juvenile Investigation Section and crimes involving the youth?
Well, you know, with minors, there's laws that apply to them, and that we can't really use for adults. So it's just different terms, like we were discussing earlier.
Oh yeah, the arrest thing. You can't. You don't say that.
We can't say we arrested a minor. We have to say we took him into custody.
Because is it that really they are not being arrested? I mean, when you're taken into custody and you read your rights and all of that, is that the same process?
It's the same process, but the law is written where we can't say arrest or we can't even use their names.
Well, yeah. Protecting the minor's identity has always been something, but the fact that you can't use an arrest, but technically it is. Though,
it is,
right?
and also like confinement, we have to say detain. When they go to court, it's adjudication. Yes.
Oh,
so
really?
Just different.
Is that just a Guam thing, or is that just sort of universal?
I believe it's universal.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, kids make a lot of really crazy mistakes.
They do.
And we've had the conversation about some of the younger and younger minors are getting involved in crimes. Are you finding that on Guam, that some of your criminals, if you will, are getting younger?
Yes. The crime rate for juveniles have risen, and we've seen this through a lot of things that's been going on. Through could be they're involved in burglary, assaults, theft of a motor vehicle. Yeah. So it's pretty much it's risen.
Is it kind of seasonal? For example, like now you have. We were talking about there being a flood of school fight videos, for example.
Yes.
That's a crime that usually takes place around the time the kids are coming back to school.
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So you're seeing a lot more of those. Do they start to drop off as the first quarter ends and the second quarter ends? Does that kind of drop off as the school year gets underway?
Yes. Well, when school first started, it just went from one fight to another, and then it goes viral, and then they just catch on, and then another group wants to videotape themselves fighting. So it's just it's like a trend to them.
Yeah, but it's also a competition.
And
I think we also discussed that. Is it a competition among groups or schools, or what have you found in?
I wouldn't say amongst groups. I just say it's something that these kids just want to get themselves on video, and
they like the notoriety.
Right, and then it could be in school, it could be after school, and they just record it. They say there's going to be a fight after school or during this time, and everybody knows, so they all gather. Wow. So and so when we get it. What happens is the school also gets it, and when the school gets it, that's when we go in. The school identifies who the students are, and then we get the information, and that's how we
And
continue.
these are pretty easy to. I mean, you just got to flip through it, and
Yes.
and they're easy
and
to identify.
and you know, like we said, we want to thank the school DOE for helping out, because they identify who's involved, and we go and get the ones that are actually fighting.
Yeah.
Those that are around, that are just watching, can also be taken in.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. A lot of people don't know that kids that are standing around
Yes.
become part of the crime, right?
Yes, because they're enticing it. You could see in the videos, and you could hear it. You hear a lot of them enticing, the fight.
Oh, they're egging them on.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
I see.
and then that falls under riot, which is rioting, which is 4 or more involved in disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so those have sort of waned. These videos, you're not seeing as many of them pop up. The school year is in full swing, so all of that is not to say that it's not going to happen again, but that it's not trending as much.
Yes.
So now we get into around the holidays. A lot of kids are out of school.
Yes.
Is that a trouble time? That's another season of crime, right?
Yeah, it's different. During school, like I said, it's the fights, and then we have the sexting, the bullying.
Oh yeah, I
things
forgot
of
about that one. Yeah.
And then when school's out, it's solely something different.
Tell me what happens about around the holiday season. What are we looking out for?
Around the holiday seasons, I could say a lot of them are involved in burglary.
Yeah.
Burglary to a vehicle, burglary to a residence, and then just things like graffiti and criminal mischief, things like that.
Do you guys dread that when the kids are out of school, like summer and the spring, or
Well,
holiday breaks?
To be honest with you, we see a break in the summer sometimes, but I don't know. Just this year, we've just been really busy with everything. I mean, from school fights to the sexting and the bullying, and then all these other things. But
Sexting is a real big deal.
yes, and
It's
it's just
when I was that age. I mean, you remember that age?
Yes.
You could barely undress in front of your classmates, much
No.
less,
And,
Kids have gotten pretty.
back in our days, we didn't have the phones.
Well, you didn't have the phones, but the whole idea.
Yes.
The whole idea.
Yeah,
Are
and kids
they-
are very naive. They just, they think
Yeah.
they think that taking a photo of themselves or somebody else, it's just going to stop there.
Yeah.
But
Are you saying that they really still don't get it? That you still come across kids that just don't understand that once you have pressed that send button?
once you press send, it's out there. You'll never get it back.
Yeah. Have you talked to the kids? I mean, do you go to the schools and talk to them a lot?
Oh yes, we've had presentations. Currently, we're having presentations at Simon Sanchez High School,
Yeah.
and we just earlier in the year we did JFK.
And
So-
are the kids surprised at what you tell them about the?
Oh yeah, a lot of
Like
them.
they think that it stops
Yes.
right there with that one send.
Right, and we even have a video that depicts a female student, coming out of the bathroom, and she's buttoning her shirt, and she's looking at her phone, and then once she gets in, she just sent a picture to I believe her boyfriend, and she gets in the classroom, and then you hear all the phones one at a time
Oh my God.
go around, and everybody's looking at it, and then they're looking at her like,
Yeah.
wow, I can't believe she did that, and she's so embarrassed that
She doesn't realize.
she doesn't realize.
That's kind of like what you were telling me. When we've had this conversation about kids don't realize how far they go. They don't realize that, it really just takes, the wrong punch or
Yes.
crack in the head. They don't realize that you can actually kill somebody.
Well, because what happens is that happens to a certain person, and then they get so embarrassed that a lot of them, you know, it leads to depression, and then they, you know, sad to say, but they commit suicide.
Yeah.
And
That's with the sexting.
sexting, and even the bullying,
The bullying,
and the cyberbullying.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen a lot of those.
And the cyberbullying is basically you're bullying somebody over text.
Harassing them over
Harassing
text,
the
or
text.
social media.
Yes.
But the point that I was trying to make was that a lot of kids, they don't realize that some of these sort of schoolyard brawls, you hit somebody the wrong way,
Yes.
and they suffer a head injury that could maim them.
Right, and they don't know. You take a kid. Some of the videos, you hit them in the head or they slam him to the ground. You don't know later on that kid may suffer a hemorrhaging in their brain, and it could turn into a fatal.
Yeah.
And sad to say, it's happened before. It's happened here.
Yeah, we have
it's
had
a while
history of
back.
that,
Yeah. So. We try to educate the kids in all the schools, but we can do so much after it cools down and everything settles down. They forget about it, then it starts up again.
Yeah.
So
That's the danger.
yes, it is.
We're talking to Scott Arceo from the Guam Police Department, Juvenile Investigation Section. We'll take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're going to engage in the conversation. The Attorney General's office, Carol Sanchez, will join us here at the table at King's with something to talk about. Come on back. Welcome back to Something to Talk About. Joining in our conversation about youth crime on Guam is a Deputy AG Carol Sanchez with the Juvenile Division. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Patty. Thank you so much for the
Now,
invite, Patty.
don't be shy. You can dig in here anytime you want to. We'll try not to make you look ugly while you're eating. And of course, Scott Arceo from the Juvenile Investigation Section at GPD joins us. We were talking last hour, Carol, and I know you deal with this all the time. Kids on Guam, minors getting into trouble, and the kinds of trouble we're talking about: sexting and school violence and bullying and cyberbullying, burglaries, seasonal crimes.
Yes,
that
everything.
happen. Yeah, everything.
Everything.
How long have you been with the AG's office now?
I've been with the AG's office for 9 years as
wow.
the Deputy Attorney General for the Juvenile Division.
Wow, and so you've seen it all.
You've seen it all.
A decade's worth of everything that comes.
Decades worth, if not, if not worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has gotten worse, in your opinion?
It has, as far as I think the crime has been steady with the same kind of crimes happening, of course, all the time. Sexting, of course, emerged. It was probably happening even before we caught it, but it's something we caught, a couple of years. I think during Alicia Limtiaco's time is when we actually saw it, which is when the sexting legislation came about. But the problem we're seeing is the younger age range of crimes happening.
I was asking him whether you're seeing younger
elementary level.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what's happening? I mean, in your experience over the years watching these trends, what's happening in our society where the kids are just getting younger?
I mean, a lot of it,
perpetrators?
it's at the elementary level, and a lot of it really is things happening at home. And of course the electronic devices. I know earlier in the earlier segment I heard you mention it wasn't happening our time. Is because we didn't have that. We didn't have wireless access. We didn't have internet access and the capability of just at the palm of our hand at all times. A lot of kids at such a young age are already given that ability through cell phones or electronic devices, and they have parents who aren't knowledgeable about the device itself.
So they're not keeping tabs on them because they don't understand the technology?
They don't, yeah. A lot of parents don't understand what is going on online, and then of course, our TV shows back in our days, and I say our days because even in my time, it was pretty much age appropriate. Now you see a lot of the trend change in just the regular Nickelodeon TV shows and TV shows that kids should be watching. Some of them have those visuals of kissing, younger age group kids. Doing those kind of conducts, and so it's kind of hard. It's just a lot of things in society has changed.
Yeah, you can't break that mold because it's already something that's in their home. They've been influenced by. It's hard to reverse it, so you got to roll with it.
Correct.
So the restorative justice. There's a program
There is.
that has some kind of sensitivity to younger kids who get into trouble. Is it the idea is to help them regain their lives and
Yes.
start all over again?
Yeah, that's the beauty. And we're working along with the Guam Police Department, very closely with the Guam Police Department. We're working with the Judiciary of Guam as well. And other key stakeholders in the that deal with juveniles and youths, because a lot of us know that many of these kids who commit these crimes generally aren't bad kids. They do it because of things happening at home. They do it because of a learned behavior, or they do it for whatever reason it is, but not because they truly want to commit the crime or we think they're going to reoffend, because some of them come into the system and we never see them again. They're really good kids. And these are the kids that we're trying to not put in the system, which is what restorative justice is about. It's about being able to hold them accountable and have a process that involves the community, have a process that involves them being able to do things, to show the community they're worthy and good citizens. And what I say is, like, if you go into the court system, you do community service. And, generally it's wherever you can do it at. With the restorative justice process, our goal is to gear it towards giving back to the community, like, maybe going to the Special Olympics and volunteering service time there, going to the dialysis
Not just
center.
picking up trash on the side
Not
of
just
the road.
picking up trash on the side of the road. That might be some of it, like painting the school bus stops if they're charged with some kind of offense.
But
where
it has to have some other ultimate public
Correct.
service.
Yes,
and that's interesting because you would know on the front lines whether or not you see that sort of recidivism. You see kids coming back into the system. Have you, with restorative justice, do you see a change in the tide?
We're just starting.
Yeah, you're just
starting,
starting. Yeah, but you can see. Can you see that it can work?
I believe it will work.
Yeah.
And it will alleviate the amount of cases going into the court system and flooding them with all these cases.
And that was the idea.
Yes, I think what's going on is there's this big movement to really have probation focus on the kids that really need it. Because when we work with children in our system, in the juvenile justice system, it's not about penalizing them and finding them guilty of a crime. It's about rehabilitating them so that they can become good citizens in our community. I mean, the whole purpose of the juvenile justice system is to restore this youth and make sure that when they go back in, they're not going to commit those crimes. And probation already has a lot of work. The courts have a lot of work. It's a large amount of kids in the system. And like I said, there are many kids who don't need to be in the system. And that takes a lot of time for probation to deal with, and the courts to deal with, and our office to deal with. So with restorative justice, they wouldn't have to go through the court system. They would.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just had this thought that at what point in what you do, when you are the responding officer or you're the investigator, at what point do you have the freedom to say, good kid, made a mistake, or does it depend on the crime that you could sort of let it go? Or
with the restorative justice program, it's going to be for the petty misdemeanor crimes. There is going to be an assessment tool that's going to be used that we're working with the courts. The courts are going through a process, the juvenile justice reform, and they have contracted with the RFK consultants, and so they have their risk assessment. But we have a mini preliminary risk assessment that will help us to identify whether or not they're a low risk offender.
Yeah.
And if they're a low risk offender, which with GPD and our office is going to be using those assessment tools, and it's going to be starting at patrol level, where they see these kids that they committed a retail theft, but they're really remorseful. They did it because they stole out of. An example is they stole at school somebody's money, and they did it because they wanted to buy food because they didn't have food at home to eat. But they're not going to reoffend, and so they'll use the tool to identify low-risk offenders. And when they do, then they would indicate on the report, referring to the restorative justice process.
how much influence does the victim have?
The victim is actually a key player in restorative justice. So in the process, it's a community, victim, and offender, because we want to hold the offender accountable. There are two different processes. The victim will always be involved. Some victims can participate actively in the panel process, because the juvenile will appear before a mediation panel or a reparative panel of 3 people that are trained through an AFMALIC that will assist in determining what. Because we don't want to just give them any kind of set sanctions. We want to give them something that is productive for the particular child. Like, nowadays it's kind of like when you commit a crime, this is all the things you're going to do.
Yeah.
We want it specialized and individualized for that particular offenders.
Tailor-made to
Correct. Tailor-made to
Yeah.
their needs so that they understand what they did and they give back to the community the right way.
So the mediation involves the actual victim,
Correct.
Because everything's got to be right with the victim.
Every,
right?
correct, and we always, and that's the key thing is whether the victim wants to actively engage in the actual panel or they want to just do a victim impact statement and say, this is what I want done. You know, these are the things I expect the victim to, the offender to do.
It is a problem. Has there already been minors adjudicated through the restorative justice program?
There hasn't been minors. It's a new program. We're just going to launch
Okay.
it soon. We're still working with the NAFA Malik as well as the police department and the courts. We're hoping to launch it by the end of the school year. But what we did have before were similar or somewhat diversionary programs. The problem was, you know, with the diversionary program is we weren't really tracking and seeing, you know, with this program now we're going to do a little better tracking and look at, it'll give us an ability to track reoffenders.
Okay.
And
Was it a
recidivism
money
rates.
issue? Was it a manpower issue?
I think, you know, everybody wanted this program, and I think when the law, there is a law that mandates the program. So when Vice Speaker Cruz enacted the law, it kind of pushed us to get it moving. And I think money is a problem and just organizing. And I think it was kind of good timing because the courts started their movement on juvenile justice reform, which kind of helped because now we're geared at really changing the system.
Yeah, the spotlight's on it, and that's
Correct.
the best time to move. But are there similar programs, or is restorative justice a sort of brand name that is everywhere?
It's there are similar programs across the nation, including in Australia. And Australia that region actually uses restorative justice for almost 100% of their cases. I mean, a majority of their cases go through a restorative
What's the
justice.
success rate?
It's very successful. I mean, obviously, you know, they have in certain areas or districts, they barely see kids going into court. Because they use restorative justice, and they're kind of small like we are.
So give me an example of the crimes that have to be committed in order for it to qualify for. I hate to say the word qualify, but
it'll be like petty misdemeanors, so like graffiti, retail theft, you know, some harassment charges, maybe even lower grades of cyberbullying, which is equivalent to harassment.
Who decides?
It would lie, again, it's with prosecutorial discretion,
Yeah.
because any case that comes into the system, prosecutors are ultimately going to decide. We do give the authority for GPD to screen them at that early stage to flag them for us, because, you know, these guys know the kids too just as much as we do.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to build good relationship and good rapport between GPD, the Guam Police, and the youths in our community.
That makes a lot of sense, because you on the front line know who these kids are all the time, right?
Yes, and the offender has to, like Carol was saying, it's the victim, the offender, and the offender has to be remorseful, and they want to engage in this program.
How do you know who's remorseful, who's pulling
Well,
wool over
that's
their
where the
eyes?
Attorney General comes in, and
yeah.
they determine.
Can you pick it? Can you call it? Are you pretty good at that?
You know what? You see some kids, and I think GPs experienced it. They come in crying.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
they're
I don't want to go to
sophisticated. They're
DWAY.
pretty
I mean,
sophisticated
yeah,
in
and you
that,
see, and you know, some of them end up wanting to help. You know,
Yeah.
and so. You know, they have a good sense. I think they've caught a lot where they had called our office and said, "Gosh, and we have this minor with us, but he really does want to help us." And so, you know, I think there's just those questions we are going to ask to see if they're really low risk.
Yeah, you can.
I mean,
you're going to vet them out.
Of course, and we're always going to
Yeah.
hope that they don't reoffend. That's the only hope we can have, and of course, because we're going to pilot this, we can gauge the rate by the end of the year as far as, you know, how many kids that we diverted into this program didn't come back, and I know there's gonna be a lot. We've seen a lot of kids in the court system that never came back.
In all, when you look at crimes among the youth on Guam and you look at other jurisdictions, is there a sort of sense of relief that we don't have the kinds of crimes that we're seeing in bigger cities and the numbers of offenders? Or do you sometimes get nervous about the trends that are popping up that never before happened? You know, we're seeing, you know, increased drug use, for example, or
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, you know, the trends, and like Carol was mentioning earlier, a lot of it is, you know, the media and what shows are being played out there that kids get influenced by. So it's the society nowadays is it's a totally different generation, and
Yeah.
you know, a lot of it is that they get very exposed to a lot of these things, and they just want to experiment. So
Yeah.
Do you find many kids that come through that have emotional issues that
Yes,
that
there is.
also have to be diverted
There
someplace
is.
else?
There is, and that's why, you know, the beauty of the juvenile justice system, and I tell a lot of people, you know, they label us as, you know, arresting and locking up kids.
Sure.
We don't. You know, really, when I tell everyone, it's really about stability, stabilizing the situation, because there are some kids who really need treatment and help.
Yeah.
And are not bad kids.
Right.
They just aren't being given the right medication for their disability.
Or it's not identified yet,
And
right?
it's not
Yeah.
identified, and their parents are ignorant as to what it is, and they don't know, because a lot of times parents are just like, my child's naughty, my child's bad. Your child has a disability that's causing the child to be that way, and so those are the things that we focus on, and really the juvenile system focuses on, is looking at these issues, bringing the family as a whole, and fixing every angle possible that we
Yeah.
could. Which I was going to say, you know, I mean, a big part of this is the education side of it, and I know that our office too is going to be launching with the Lonnie K. I don't know if you heard about the Lonnie
Yeah.
K Task Force.
Yeah.
We're going to be launching the child sexual abuse education curriculum soon, in March or April of this year with the Department of Education. So
That's kind of grant funded too, isn't it?
that is, it's a legislative mandate. We're very lucky that we have, you know, the strong support of Department of Public Health, the Coalition of Family Violence,
Yeah.
the Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Family Violence, and the Department of Education. But we have a lot of supporting partners that are really putting in money, because we
Okay.
know that this is a very important curriculum.
Yeah, and I think people recognize that you need to stop it where it is right now.
Correct. Yeah, it's getting younger, and
Yeah,
you know,
getting
it's,
younger. That's a danger.
if the homes can't teach it, you know, I mean, we're not saying the schools should teach it, but we're saying at least they're being educated at some point in time for them to recognize and protect themselves and protect others.
Yeah.
And
Well, I want to thank you guys for stopping
Thank
by.
you.
Very
Thank you so
knowledgeable.
much.
I appreciate that, and I hope that our viewing audience will take away something, things to look out for during the holiday season. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the King's Restaurant in Tamuning for all the fabulous food. We'll see you.